Shalom everyone, welcome to Science Lab. The signs are happening because the Lord Jesus is coming. Every day we are looking at some of the signs that are happening around us.
Today we're going to see some of the end time signs happening in Israel. And Israel has allegedly conducted more overnight strikes on terror targets in Syria.
Pre-dawn strikes in central and southern Syria, which Syrian media attributed to Israeli warplanes, reportedly targeted a terrorist military site and a military airfield used by an Iran-backed terror group.
Now, one of these reports said that the targets included a weapons shipment bound for Hezbollah, a terror army entrenched in Lebanon that acts as a tentacle outstretched from Tehran.
Syrian state-run news agency Sana, citing an unnamed military source, reported that the attack took place at 3 a.m. by Israeli planes approaching and firing missiles from Lebanese airspace. The military source added that immediately the air defense confronted the hostile missiles successfully and professionally that prevented any of the missiles from reaching the army's targeted sites, the Sana report added. Reports of the damage differ, but a London-based Arabic newspaper told a different story, reporting that at least one Syrian soldier was killed and 4 others injured in the overnight strikes. Israel did not comment on its alleged involvement in the overnight strikes, following its long-standing policy of remaining quiet on its responsibility for military strikes outside the Jewish state's borders. On February 28, 2020, Syria blamed Israel for a drone strike that killed a man identified by Syrian media as a local Hezbollah commander responsible for recruiting more fighters to establish a network for attacking against the Jewish state. Israel, once again, did not comment on its involvement. However, the Israeli Defense Force made 2 significant exceptions to that policy recently. On March 2, 2020, Israeli Elections Day, the IDF announced that it had targeted a sniper targeting Israelis from the Syrian Golan Heights. 1 week before that, the IDF announced that it struck Palestinian Islamic Jihad targets in Gaza and Syria in a round of fighting in which over 80 rockets were fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel. PIJ is the second largest terrorist group operating in the Strip, second only to Hamas. It's also backed by Iran with headquarters in Syria. Now that southern Israel has quieted down, with no recent major flare-ups along with the Gaza border, things are heating up in the north of the Jewish state. Though Israel does not often acknowledge its involvement in specific strikes in Syria, several Israeli officials have hinted or outright stated that the Jewish state has carried out hundreds of strikes on military targets in Syria throughout the Syrian civil war. Those strikes almost exclusively target Iranian military sites, weapon shipments, and Hezbollah targets. In new cases, the IDF has struck Syrian military aerial defense batteries fired at Israeli planes. The Jewish state constantly monitors the threat at its north borders and has vowed that it will not allow Iran to entrench itself in countries across the regions to use as a launching pad for attacks on Israel.
And now, moving on to the next information. Tens of thousands of Israelis will be required to remain quarantined as cultural, sporting, and other public events, including celebrations of Purim holiday, will also be cancelled.
The Health Ministry on the 3rd of March 2020 issued new guidelines to combat the spread of the coronavirus, including a requirement for anyone returning from France, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and Spain to maintain a 2-week quarantine. Travelers returning from China, Singapore, Thailand, Japan, Hong Kong, Macau, South Korea, and Italy have already been instructed to do the same.
The ministry is instructing anyone who has arrived from any of these countries within the past 2 weeks to also enter a period of quarantine. 5 flights from France, 7 from Germany, 2 from Spain, 4 from Austria, and 1 flight from Switzerland are all expected to land at the Ben Gurion International Airport before midnight. Health officials are expected to meet people as they disembark and instruct them in the new guidelines. Anyone traveling in transit from these destinations will not be required to take any precautionary measures. Health Minister Yaakov Litzman also announced he is banning gatherings of over 5,000 people. Purim festivals and holiday events have been cancelled by municipalities around the country, and the Jerusalem municipality said it is considering the cancellation of the Jerusalem Marathon schedule for March 20. The Israel Football Association announced matches will continue, but the crowds will remain home. Earlier on March 4, 2020, a teacher who is also a deputy principal in an elementary school near Tel Aviv was confirmed to be infected by the virus. As of this evening, 2,349 students and 146 teachers and support staffs from various schools and kindergartens are making among those quarantined. Eurovision winner and international star Neta Brasila, also returned from Spain, is also required to stay in quarantine for 2 weeks, as are 150 EIAI crew members. Tel Aviv and Bar Ilan universities have announced they are cancelling all academic conferences that include the participation of international guests at least until the end of April, although the decision is expected to be extended. The Civil Service Commission announced it is banning all international travel for employees and strongly urged that any civil service member refrain from private international travel as well. Health workers are also required to stay in Israel at the instructions of the Director General of the Health Ministry. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the Health Ministry earlier in the day and briefed reports on the new measures adopted by the government, saying that the world was in the midst of the pandemic. This is the truth and it must be said, the Prime Minister stated. Israel is one of the only countries in the West that is in a relatively good place, the Prime Minister said. We have taken severe measures in order to prevent the spread of the virus.
Netanyahu advised against shaking hands and suggested the Indian greeting Namaste as an option.
After seeing all these things, we definitely need a break. Don't go anywhere, we'll continue after a short break. Welcome back to Science Lab. The science are happening because the Lord Jesus is coming. Before the break, we were seeing about science happening in Israel. And let's continue. Each spring, for the past 50 years, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee has held a policy conference for delegates from America, Israel, and around the world. One thing brings them together. They are unabashedly pro-Israel.
So when the Shia Muslim country of Azerbaijan sent Samir Sharifov, its finance minister, to address the gathering of 18,000 Israel supporters, it was very public and a positive endorsement for the state of Israel.
Zarifov was part of a long roster of speakers, a who is who of current leadership in the United States and Israel. The President of Colombia, Serbia, and Dominican Republic also addressed the crowd. So how did the historic events come about? Azerbaijan is a small country with powerful neighbors, Russia to the north and Iran to the south. It is a part of the former Soviet Union, achieving independence in 1991. Since that time, ties with Israel have been developing. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made 2 visits to Baku, the first in 1997 and the second in late 2016. In his AIPAC address, Zarifov acknowledged the Israel-supported Azerbaijan in needed with armaments. He also read remarks from Azerbaijan's first Vice President, Mehriban Aliyeva, who reiterated the country's gratitude for the Jewish people, both in Israel and America, who have maintained close ties with Azerbaijan and contribute to the strengthening of our relationships with these countries. We are much grateful to them. Was the public stand at the AIPAC policy conference without risk for the tiny nation? It is undoubtedly took the close ties between itself and Israel to a new level of visibility. The Jerusalem Post quoted from an interview with Dr. Avinom Idan of Haifa University. It shows to everyone that Azerbaijan are not hiding this special relationship with Israel and Azerbaijan. It takes the risk they are willing to pay any price to be under pressure from their neighbors.
And now moving on to the next information. A mere 2 years ago, the Sea of Galilee, which is also called as Kinneret, was in big trouble. 4 years of drought-like conditions had left its water level approaching the black line, the point at which water quality is damaged and the ecology of the lake seriously compromised.
But today, the Israelis are rejoicing as the Galilee is 0.94 meters from the upper red line.
The Kinneret is a thermometer, so to speak, of Israel's water health. When the rains are plentiful, the lake is full and the country relaxes because there is enough water. On the other hand, during years of drought, people speak of the lake's water level in terms of red lines and black lines. These are 2 red lines, the upper and the lower, which measures its peak fullness and the point at which water may not be pumped out and there is a noticed deterioration in water quality. And then there is a black line, the historic low point, 1.87 meters below the lower red line. In 2018, the Times of Israel reported Israel's water authority warned that the Sea of Galilee was drying up as a result of low rainfall and warned that it was approaching the black line. Fast forward to today, Israel experienced a rainy January which has continued unto the month of February. The desert is awash with the color of white flowers. Some of those seeds can lay dormant for years until there is enough water for them to germinate. Talks have now begun of opening the Degania Dam to let water out of the Kinneret. The Degania Dam was constructed in 1964 at the mouth of the River Jordan to help regulate water levels in the Kinneret. It has been partially opened in the year since its construction, the last time in 2013. The Jewish press reports the positive effect that the opening of the dam would prevent the possible flooding of the communities located near the lake and would replenish the waters of the Jordan River and onward south to the Dead Sea. However, the timing is important. Waiting until the lake has reached full capacity could mean too much water being released at once and could overwhelm the capacity of the small dam. The decision if and when to open the dam belongs to Israel's water authority. which met in mid-February to begin its considerations. In the meantime, there is snow on Mount Hermon that will melt in the coming weeks and continue to fill the lake. Will this be the year that the upper red line is reached and the dam opened? There is a very good chance that will happen. Regardless, there is water in the Kinneret, and that brings joy to the hearts of Israelis and visitors alike.
Israel is a timepiece we should watch out for in these last days. All the incidents that are happening in and around Israel will show us what time we are living in. All these show that we're living in the last days and the Lord Jesus Christ is coming again very soon. Thank you for joining us in this episode, and don't forget to tune in to the Science Lab next time.
And now we would like to end the program by asking you a question. What suggestion did Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu give as an option for handshake? And the options are option A, hand wave, option B, namaste, and option C, foot shake.
You may send us the right answer by email to sciencelab@angeltv.org. If you have missed any of the episodes, you can watch it again on the Science Lab YouTube channel, but don't forget to like, share, and comment on the video as well.
Also, ask your friends and relatives to watch the Science Lab so that they will know that we are living in the last days. Remember, signs are happening because the Lord Jesus is coming.
Maranatha.